not entertained?
Yes, sir! We'll have a real good time!
He's Dave, and I'm Dallas, and this is Vintertainment. We have opinions on just about everything. Sometimes those opinions are spot on. Sometimes they go down easier with a glass of wine. This is Vintertainment, the wine and entertainment pairing podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Vintertainment. This is the podcast where we pair wine with entertainment. It's as simple as that. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Chris McGilvray. Make sure you listen to our Vinterview with Chris to learn about his history as a filmmaker and his recently released feature-length documentary, Eden, all about the Mount Eden Vineyard and Winery in the Santa Cruz Mountains and the impact that owning and managing a vineyard has had on multiple generations within a single family. It's a wine documentary that starts out somewhat typical, but then cuts deeper than most. It was a great conversation, and you will definitely want to listen to it and watch Eden from 2024, currently streaming on Plex for free in the States, but also available to rent or buy on Apple TV or YouTube. And on that note, Chris, welcome to the main Vintertainment segment, and are you ready to talk wine and the Western to end all West?
Oh man, you have no idea. I've been waiting for this one. This is literally one of my top 5 favorite movies. So
nice.
This is going to be a blast.
Beautiful. But before we get to the movie, first we have to challenge you with our wine trivia question of the week.
All right, let's do it, man. Let's see what happens here.
Let's see what happens. So, on theme with a Western, when Spanish settlers originally came to the New World and traveled up through Mexico and into Southern California, they brought with them their Listan Prieto, which is what they called in Spain, aka País in Chile, or aka Criolla Chica in Argentina, aka the Mission Grape in America, a wine grape they used to make sacramental wine and which they planted all throughout the West. Now, this was never considered to be a grape that produced particularly good fine wine. Missionaries did, however, make incredible fortified dessert wine called Angelica with it, a style of dessert wine that is still made today. The oldest mission grape vine in America is a tree-like monstrosity of a vine called the mother vine, or the Viña Madre. The question is, this vine is still producing fruit about half a barrel's worth, and is estimated to be how old? Is it A, 100 plus years old, B, 130 plus years old, C, 170 plus years old, or D, 250 plus years old? What do we think?
I have my answer. What are you thinking?
I got some ideas. So
All right.
I know it's older than 100 years because there's a lot of Old Vine Zinfandel that is 100 years. There's even some Old Vine Zinfandel in California that is 130 years. So I'm blowing past those two.
All right. Same here.
It says America, right? Are we talking about the United States of America? Or are we talking about America the continent?
America the continent. Right.
America, we can go with America, the continent, actually.
So is it in Chile? Yeah. Is that where we're talking?
No, it's here. It's here in California.
It's here.
Really?
Yeah.
So it actually is in California.
It's in California proper.
Interesting.
It's in Los Angeles.
It's in as a matter of
county.
I could be there in about 15 minutes from where I am right now.
Oh, okay. And so, like, we're talking.
Yeah, fun fact, in the 1800s and 1700s, LA was the center of California wine.
It was.
Long before Napa was. Yeah.
Like, we're talking its own rooted, so it's got to be in sand, or phylloxera would have killed it. So, damn, is it 170 or is it 250? Oh my God, if we're talking 250, I mean, that thing, I can't do math.
This year is America's 250th
That's
celebration, right?
1776. So there
It's
you go.
amazing how nobody, it's such a milestone, by the way, but when you mention it to people, everyone's like, oh shit, yeah.
I mean, I know that, but I'm sort of
I know.
ignoring it.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, that's right.
Well, and everyone's trying to avoid thinking about the MMA match that's going to happen at the White House in honor of the 250th anniversary. We're like, you know what? Let's just pretend this isn't happening right now.
I'm
This
like,
is not what.
maybe this happened, you know,
That's
8
right,
years
that's right.
ago, or maybe it's going to happen in the future. I'm not going to. Okay, so is it 250 or is it 170? You know,
Final answer.
My final answer is I'm going to say it's 170. It's 170 plus years old.
I'm going 250.
Dallas is going 250.
Yeah.
Chris
All right.
is going 170.
I'm going 170 plus.
All right. So there is a winery that has 170 plus year old mission grapevines. Bruck Cellars, based out of Berkeley, California, makes a regular batch of Angelica every year from 170 plus year old vines. You can currently purchase half bottles for $58 a pop, which isn't bad. Angelica is never cheap, my friends. It's a fortified dessert wine. I have a half bottle of the Angelica from Temecula that cost me $75, like 10 years ago even. It cost $75, and I still haven't opened it. But for $58, you can get 170 plus year old vines from Brock Cellars, BROC. But you can watch the documentary on the oldest vine on Som TV about the 250 plus year old vine
Wow.
to know the full story of this mother vine and the group of Californians that have been tending to it in recent days. So it just kind of grew wild for a long, long time, untended to. But this group recently in the LA area were absolutely blown away by its size and resilience. They knew they had to try to make wine again from this historic vine. So Patrick Kelly was tasked with assessing the vine, pruning it, and creating wine from its grapes. He jokes that as the leading expert on this age of vine, of which there are only 6 in all of existence in the world at this type of age, thanks to Phylloxera, there are not many out there anymore that go quite this long. He used his farming skills to teach the groundskeepers how to properly maintain the vine for future harvests. As it turns out, the vine was very healthy despite its relative neglect and age. From fires to earthquakes, this vine has seen all of California history for the
That's
most
probably
part.
why it was healthy,
American.
because it wasn't fucked with.
It was not messed with. I know. So
Totally.
they produced one round of wine from this vine. You can always find these Angelica when they produced it. They only produce it once in a while. Like I said, it's roughly half a barrel's worth. It's very hard to get, but it is CavallettiVineyards.com. Cavaletti, CAVALETTI Vineyards.com. But their second round, their first round, there was even less of the wine, but the second round, the grapes were even bigger, healthier, better color, and more. It started, and now that they're tending to it, it's actually getting even healthier and producing a little bit more fruit. So
That's
250 plus year old vines. And if you folks have never tried Angelica, go seek it out. It is a beautiful, beautiful dessert wine. Fortified and oxidized like a tawny port type of a thing. So you get a lot of those like big dried fruits, maple, coffee. It's syrup in a glass, and it is just magnificent. So everyone, go take a look for those bad boys. And on that note, all right, Chris,
There we go.
on to business. Tell our listeners what movie you chose to talk about today and why.
Well, I definitely chose Once Upon a Time in the West, which is like the unsung hero of Sergio Leone's films. Most people, you say Sergio Leone, they instantly think of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You know, maybe they'll go to Fistful of Dollars. That was the first one. Both amazing, iconic movies that I absolutely love. But like Once Upon a Time in the West is the mother lode, because it's like, literally, it was the movie after he made his original trilogy. He wanted to make his gangster picture, what became Once Upon a Time in America, that he didn't make until 1984. We're talking like, this is 16 years before that. He didn't want to make a Western anymore, but the studio was like, you're the Western guy. You got to make a Western. So he's like, all right, if we're going to do this, we are going to do it. And so he actually took Dario Argento, who was like the master of Italian horror,
Yeah.
and Bernardo Bertolucci, who is a very, very famous Italian filmmaker, known for like Last Tango in Paris, Last Emperor, a bunch of other, great stuff. The Conversation, or not the Conformist.
Conformist.
There you go.
Yeah,
Oh,
Conformist.
that Conformist. Oh, just fucking fantastic film.
So
My God.
beautiful. All that Vittorio Storaro cinematography.
so good.
It's so good. So anyway, all three of them got together and locked themselves in like the cinema vault and watched as many classic American Westerns as they could. All the John Ford stuff they could get a hold on, and, Howard Hawks, all the great stuff. And this is what they came out with. And so I'm like, it's such an amazing, operatic, epic, sweeping cinematic statement of what a Western should be. So that's why I chose it, man.
It's a good
Gorgeous.
choice.
I will
It's a good
say, interestingly, I've always loved this movie. I think this was only my second time seeing it, but the first time I saw it, I was just like, I owned it on digital already, because I was just like, at one point I ran across it online, I was like, oh, that's a no-brainer. I want to own that. That is like an amazing Western. I do not like his Clint Eastwood movies.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not a fan of any of them. I've tried so many times to get into them, and I kind of authentically hate them. I just cannot get into them at all. But this movie rings every bell for me. But it was kind of a bit of an antithesis to what he had been doing before. Not entirely, but it was a bit of an evolution. But yeah.
Great.
Definitely an evolution. And I mean, like, seriously, this film goes down amongst filmmakers as being potentially the greatest opening sequence of all time. It's
kind of bar none. Yeah.
It's hard to beat. It is like the greatest sound design. It's like, it's such an unbelievably awesome, epic, slow build open.
Yes.
Every frame, every look, every bit of lighting cutting across a person's eyes beneath the brim of their hat. You can smell this film. That's what's also so interesting. You can fucking smell this film, because all the other sensory input is so, it's so acute. Yeah.
Well, and it takes this time to make sure you're noticing all the sensory input, right? Which is part of that slow pace. And, when we talked about Chris's documentary, we talked about how early on he sets the entire tone and pacing, like what to expect from this documentary, with a couple of choices. Go listen to that, VINTERVIEW to hear all the details. But this similarly, like this opening sequence, it's one of the best opening sequences of all time, but it also, the movie doesn't change after that. No. This is what the movie is. It's set. Exactly what you're getting once this opening sequence is done. They're like, and this is what the next 2.5 hours are going to be. Buckle up.
It totally is the most consistent thing that Sergio Leone ever did. I'm as a filmmaker, I always look at films for inspiration. That's what I, get excited about. And so a lot of the times I actually love movies because of particular sequences or scenes that stick with me. Certain uses of cinematic technique that really jumps out at me more than even loving it as a whole. And, so I'm always very forgiving about the whole. And I will totally admit, Sergio Leone's notorious for like having a bunch of great scenes and sequences and then following it with a bunch of crappy ones, which is probably why you don't like the Clint Eastwood ones, because The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is super sloppy, man. It's messy, but like the stuff that hits is so good. And this one is the much more toned down, streamlined, purposeful intent film.
Right. Yeah, nothing is sloppy here.
No. And it's, one of the things about that is one of the big parts of obviously Sergio Leone is Ennio Morricone's score. He scored every single one of his, films. And it's always, you always remember that music to the point where Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it's just like, you put that in any kind of film and everybody knows that it's like a Western showdown.
And a lot of martial arts films.
Yep. Totally. It's just like the comedy beat. So this one, he actually had Ennio Morricone write the score before they actually filmed it. So they had the score on the set, and so they were able to time every single one of those sequences to it. So when you watch it from that perspective, you can see why it's such a perfect marriage of music and imagery. The timing, like the reveal of, you know, Henry Fonda's character as the villain is the most epically, perfectly timed imagery and musical composition that you are going to encounter. It's so amazing. That like wide shot where they come out of the bushes and they start walking towards the camera. You still don't know it's Henry Fonda, and then the music is like building and building, and the swell hits on the actual dolly shot, like, you know, orbital that swings around to reveal Henry Fonda's face. It is like the most impeccably cinematic thing you see. It's so cool.
Yeah, if you wanted to, this film does. What I love about it is, if someone asked me to show them a singular film of the capacity for filmmaking, it would be this one, because everything about it, like the immersive sound, which, to correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't a major thing back in the day when this was filmed. It wasn't at all. And so the immersive sound, the idea of the birds, and you can hear him when he's out in the dark smoking a cigarette. You can hear the ash of the cigarette. It's fucking fantastic. It's just fantastic.
It is fucking fantastic.
And it was a bit of a dream of Morricone to have the score written before he shot the movie. That was something he had always wanted to do, but it was never a reality, except for apparently the final scenes of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He was able to get that done. And so he shot those final scenes to already made music, but this was the first movie where he was able to, he had the time, he had the budget, he had the luxury of going to Morricone, and like they just worked it all out in advance. And then they were able to shoot all those sequences. So on that note, guys, let's get to it. A brief history of Once Upon in the West for context for our listeners. So this is the fourth and almost final Western directed by Sergio Leone, the man who reinvigorated the genre with his Man with No Name trilogy starring Clint Eastwood. Those films, of course, being 1964's A Fistful of Dollars, which was based on an Akira Kurosawa samurai film Yojimbo, 1965's For a Few Dollars More, and 1966's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, each film proving more financially successful and more technically accomplished than the last. These films launched the subgenre cheekily called spaghetti western, of which over 600 films were made in Europe between 1964 and 1978, and almost 500 of those made in Italy alone. The films were traditionally made on low budgets. That's why there's so many of them. And in Italy...
Okay, stop. Hold here, Dave, for a second. One of my dreams, because my producing partner, Austin, here, he has a similar sort of idea where he's just like, if we could just rent a place out in Joshua Tree for like 2 months and just invite a whole bunch of like self-contained film crews and just try and make as many sort of a Western themed
and regurgitate the cast like in different roles kind of a thing.
Like Roger Corman style. Roger Corman, they made a like that's totally where Jack Nicholson got his first start. He was like writing and part of that acting crew. And those
that has been my idea. That has been my idea for at least a decade. And I'm just like, now's the time to kind of pull some shit like that off. Like now is the time where that could actually work. Anyway. All right, go on.
All right. Well, back to this point in time in cinema history. But after 3 such spaghetti westerns, Leone had little interest in doing another, especially as star Clint Eastwood equally wanted to switch gears before he became trapped in a single genre a la John Wayne. For his part, Leone was hoping to move on to other material. As Chris already pointed out, his passion project would eventually become the movie Once Upon a Time in America, a 4-hour epic. I thought this movie was long. A 4-hour epic starring Robert De Niro, James Wood, and Joe Pesci. However, it would be decades before this vision materialized. The movie wouldn't be made and ultimately released until 1984 because American studios had a lot of convincing to do. Luckily, they had just the thing, another Western, but one that starred beloved American actor Henry Fonda. Fonda had long established himself as an American icon, appearing in dozens of films and earning himself 2 Oscar nominations for The Grapes of Wrath, Best Actor, and 12 Angry Men, Best Picture, having co-produced the film with Reginald Rose. Sergio Leone was a huge fan of Fonda. Fonda was, in fact, his favorite actor of all time. And Leone had wanted to work with him for his entire career. He apparently could never get past his agent before this point in time.
Sounds about right.
Paramount, yeah, right? Doesn't that sound right?
Some things have changed.
Some things have not changed. But Paramount offered Fonda on a silver platter, along with a hefty budget, a package Leone could not say no to another Western. Be damned. But Leone still needed an actual script. What was this Western starring Henry Fonda going to be? Jump to just before Christmas 1966, Bernardo Bertolucci went to see The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in Rome at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the first day of its run. Watching films, he later recalled, was a way of finding some comfort from the ones I was not then able to make myself. Amen. He had directed 2 feature films, The Grim Reaper in 1962 and Before the Revolution 1964, which had been screened at the Cannes and New York film festivals, but which, quote, was almost determined not to find an audience, unquote. Since then, Bertolucci's career had ground to a halt. He felt like a foreigner in his own country. But a happy surprise awaited Bertolucci at the screening he had chosen. Sergio Leone himself was actually in the projection booth to oversee the projection of his film. It was a different time back then, people. Mm-hmm. Dario Argento was in the booth with him. Leone recognized Bertolucci, and Dario made all the introductions. The following day, Leone telephoned Bertolucci at home and asked, had he enjoyed the film? I said that I did, but that was not enough. Sergio wanted to know why, so I replied with a phrase which I think he liked very much, which almost seduced him. I said I liked the way he filmed horses' asses. In general, in both Italian and German westerns, the horses were filmed from the front and sides, in profile. But when you film them, I said, you always show their backsides. A chorus of backsides. Very few directors shoot the back, which is less rhetorical and romantic. One is John Ford, and the other is you. And Bertolucci might as well have given Leone a hand job because the result was the same. He was completely knocked sideways by this, went quiet for a few seconds and said, we must make a film together sometime. And he started to tell me the beginning of a story.
That's what I'm
Leone,
talking about.
That's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's how it used to be done.
Exactly.
That's how it should always be done, but alas.
I don't need to see your information. Like, here, I like the way you shoot horses' asses. Let's work together and make some fucking magic.
Yeah, and next thing you know, a big budget, like 3-hour art house Western is born. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
I know, right? It would.
Yes.
Really would.
In
That's
any
how it
event.
was done, gentlemen. Yeah.
Leone signed Bertolucci and Argento to write the treatment for his new film. Thus, the 3 men began a series of meetings at Leone's home in the Via Lasipo. The process went on for 2 months, though Argento claimed 6, with the discussions focused on the many meanings of the phrase "C'era una volta il West," which means once upon a time there was the West. And this is the Italian title of the final film, by the way. The idea being to juxtapose the fairy tale nature of the Golden Age, the Western mythos of the gunslingers, hence Once Upon a Time, with the reality of industrialization and quote-unquote progress, with modern business and the railroad laying down tracks over the past. The final result of the mini-script conferences involving Leone, Bertolucci, and Argento was a treatment or story consisting mainly of descriptions, suggestions for visual images, and stage directions. Bertolucci remembers it as, quote, huge, about 300 pages long, unquote. With the treatment...
Great first draft.
When the treatment was complete, both Bertolucci and Argento had to move on to other projects, and Leone took it to Sergio Donati, the scriptwriter who had worked uncredited on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So Donati stated, it wasn't so big, about 80 pages. Who knows? I wrote the whole script in 25 days, I think, working like hell, scarcely getting up from my seat. That's how it's done. And I had to rewrite just 2 things. If you read the shooting script, everything was shot exactly as in my script, including the fly at the station, which we will get to again in just a little bit.
Yeah, we will.
Because that's a very cool moment. Yet, despite Leone's enthusiasm, Fonda was hesitant to take the role. The version Fonda received was written in stilted English, a direct translation of Donati's words. Quote, I didn't dig it and I turned it down. I told the fellas I was lunching with that some Italian producer was flying in to try to talk me into doing it. Who, they asked. Sergio somebody. Sergio Leone? I said yes, and they all fell down. Seems Sergio Leone had made the 3 biggest box office pictures to come out of Italy. Well, I went home and called an old valued friend, Eli Wallach. I told him I wasn't wild about the script. Eli said, pay no attention to the script. Just go. You'll fall in love with Sergio. You'll have a marvelous time, believe me.
Believe it.
Fonda thought he needed to change his appearance to appear quote-unquote villainous, however. He thought his baby blues and clean-shaven face wouldn't cut it. He grew a beard and put in brown contact lenses to make himself quote-unquote darker, but when he showed up to set, Leone immediately yelled, off, and made Fonda take out the contacts and shave. He wanted Fonda as the Fonda playing against type, and those piercing blue eyes are entirely retranslated to audiences as the cold, calculating, soulless eyes of Frank, who Fonda plays to pitch perfection. Now, Clint Eastwood was originally offered the role of quote-unquote harmonica, but he was not persuaded to return the way Leone was. James Coburn and Terrence Stamp were additionally considered, but the role ultimately went to 46-year-old Charles Bronson in his breakout performance. At 46 gives hope for us all, doesn't it?
Absolutely, guys. And go look at this guy for 46. Yeah, go look at this guy at 46 because he has a whole career after this.
He does.
This is
he
just
does.
the beginning, man. This
is the beginning, baby.
Before Death Wish and all that. Man.
Yes. Yeah. Leone was captivated by Bronson's face, saying that, quote, as Jean-Luc Godard once wrote of Gary Cooper's face, it belongs to the mineral kingdom. Unquote. The third major male character, Cheyenne, was originally meant to go to Eli Wallach, but Leone feared audiences would associate him too readily with his Tuco character from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and opted to find another 47-year-old Jason Robards. And Claudia Cardinal, who was once declared as, quote, after spaghetti, Italy's happiest invention, unquote, she was the first major female character Leone had ever had. According to her, she had been friends with Leone for a decade, yet it wasn't until now that he had ever had anything for her. And it was only at the prodding of Bertolucci that Leone agreed that a female protagonist would be intriguing. Lastly, Leone had always wanted to have the score to the film made first, as we've mentioned before, then shoot to match the music. Before now, it had only been those final scenes of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly that he'd ever been able to make that happen with. But this time, he worked with Morricone to create 4 musical themes for the 4 major characters, which would play whenever they would feature. The music was created before filming, and Leone would often play the music out loud while filming each character's scene so that each actor could get into the feel and vibe of their character while the music was playing. This would be pretty much the only primary music of the entire music were these 4 themes.
It's built like a theatrical production.
Yes. Once Upon a Time in the West was released in December 1968 in Italy and May 1969 in America, with 20 minutes trimmed from the runtime in America. The film was a hit. And, you know, suckers, this should prove something to them. The film was a hit in Europe, taking in 40 million worldwide, but only 5.3 in America. The film was shot on a $5 million budget, or roughly $56 million in 2026 dollars. Just to put that in perspective, a 3-hour movie on $56 million today. Damn. Okay.
That's great.
An epic.
Let's get to it.
Too.
Yes. Now let's talk about this movie proper. Now here's the part of the podcast where we break this film down act by act, then discuss our thoughts about the movie and what we were thinking in terms of a wine pairing as well in between each act, and how both our thoughts on the movie and our thoughts on the wine evolved as we go. Let's get to it. Dallas, take it away.
That's right. This is Act 1, people, so follow along if you have not seen the film, or if you have, because you have no choice if you're listening to this podcast, because that's what's coming up. Act 1. A train arrives at the old west town of Flagstone, where a man with a harmonica played by Charles Bronson kills 3 men attempting to ambush him. Although he was expecting an outlaw named Frank to be present at the ambush, he concludes that the men belong to the outlaw Cheyenne's gang due to their wearing that gang's signature duster. Fun fact number 1. The 3 men trying to kill Harmonica were originally meant to be played by Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, and Eli Wallach, representing the death of Leone's previous characters and style of Western. But Eastwood refused even this small part in the film, and Van Cleef was unavailable, squashing the idea. Fun fact number 2. The scene where a fly irritates one of the ambushers for an obscenely long time, one of the first moments where the audience realizes this is a very different kind of Western than the pulpy thrillers they were accustomed to, was done by attaching the fly to the actor by a very thin thread so that it buzzed around his face and never left. Those are your 2 fun facts. By the way, that fly scene, fantastic. We'll get back to it, I'm sure. Meanwhile, Frank and his gang murder Brent McBain and his 3 children as they prepare for a welcome for their new wife and mother at their ranch dubbed Sweetwater. Frank leaves evidence at the murder scene implicating Cheyenne. Shortly after, a former prostitute arrives at the local town and reveals she is Jill McBain, who married McBain a month earlier in New Orleans. As she travels to Sweetwater, she stops at a wayside inn, tavern, trading post, where her beauty draws the unwelcomed attention of the barman, Lionel Stander. They are suddenly interrupted by a noisy off-screen gun battle. The outlaw Cheyenne, played by Jason Robards, enters wearing shackles on his wrist. The sound of a harmonica again reveals the presence of the nameless stranger, who has been watching from a dark corner of the tavern. Cheyenne dubs him Harmonica, and he uses Harmonica's gun to force another patron to shoot apart the chains at his wrist. Cheyenne's men soon arrive, too late to help him escape the prison guards, who now lie dead outside. Harmonica notes that the 3 men he killed earlier were wearing the same duster overcoats as Cheyenne's men, and Cheyenne is annoyed that rivals may be copying his trademark duster. Gay. Jill and Sam arrive at Sweetwater to find a crowd of somber wedding guests standing around the outdoor tables, now put to use as funeral pyres. As the burial comes to an end, the crowd discovers that the torn-off collar of a duster overcoat was found on a nail by the door. This marks the massacre at Cheyenne's work. The men form a posse and ride off to track down the outlaw and hang him. Sam offers to drive Jill back to the Flagstone, but she says she will stay at Sweetwater. That evening, she ransacks the McBain household looking for anything of value that might have been hidden away. At the town laundry in Flagstone that night, Harmonica puts the laundry man, Wobbles, through a violent interrogation, wanting to know why Frank didn't show up at the train. Wobbles doesn't know. He only arranged the meeting. Harmonica suspects Frank was occupied at McBain's farm just then, but Wobbles insists otherwise. Cheyenne did that job. Everyone knows it. We got proof, quote unquote. Harmonica doesn't believe it. Quote, that was always one of Frank's tricks. Faking evidence, end quote. Back at Sweetwater, Jill finds a group of miniature buildings stored away in a trunk, including a model train station with a fancy swinging sign that says, Station. She hears the sound of a harmonica outside and fires a shotgun into the darkness. The sound of the harmonica moves further away. In the morning, as she is about to leave for good, she finds Cheyenne on her doorstep, while his men wait outside. He barges in and asks for coffee. He tells of being chased by the posse all night as he helps make the fire for the coffee. He says he would never kill a kid. Quote unquote, I ain't the mean bastard people make me out. He decided to come take a look at the scene of his supposed crime. Not only is he annoyed that someone is trying to blame him, but neither he nor Jill can understand why the killings happened at all. The place looks so worthless. He imagines that McBain must have hidden away a treasure somewhere. Jill tells him that, if so, she couldn't find it. All right, let's think about this. What are we thinking about Act 1 here?
Dear listeners, Gallus is allowed to sit and make the gay joke. Just so everyone knows that. If you're new to us.
By the way, Dallas is going to make whatever joke he wants. That's generally a problem. But there you go. There we are.
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure. Fight your moms. Fight your congressman. It's not going to change.
Before we get the voicemail, I'm just like, Dallas is allowed to do that. Just so everyone knows. Just in case you're new to us.
All right, Chris. So, what are we thinking about the actual?
Well, I'm going to start with the Eli Wallach thing, which is that forget about the script and just go and have fun with Sergio Leone. Because, seriously, it's like when you try and break a Leone film down into all three of your acts and go through the plotting is always super, super complicated. Yeah. And it's hard to actually track it. The joy is literally just experiencing the film and going through it. And so, we keep talking about this opening sequence, and the opening sequence does so many amazing things. One of the first things is that sound design. It literally builds sort of a score out of a continuous sequence of sound elements. So it's you got these three super bad looking dudes that are going to be causing trouble.
Great faces.
And they got their guns and they're going, and they're they're sort of setting themselves around this train station, and they're sitting there waiting for a train. And this train station's in the middle of nowhere, but every single element has a different sound. You've got the ticker tape from the telegraph going. Yeah. And so that's got sort of the beat. And then you've got the sound of the old windmill going, spinning around. And all of these things start to work together to be able to create this amazing sense of tension. And before you know it, you have literally sat through a 6.5 minute sequence that has 0 lines of dialogue, where it's basically just a bunch of dudes walking occasionally, but mostly just standing there waiting and
looking around,
totally engaged. Yeah. And the thing that's super fun about all of that, so you introduce all these bad guys. They're these are going to be the baddest dudes ever. But then the train finally arrives, and then you finally get to introduce your hero, Harmonica. And, right off the bat, spoiler alert, he wastes all 3 of them instantly. But Sergio Leone also does something that's interesting he'd never done before, which is that in that gunfight where he is quicker on the draw and wastes those other guys, he actually gets hit. And he actually is vulnerable, which is also a really cool thing. Because usually in Westerns, your hero is not vulnerable.
Certainly not the first scene, not the introductory scene. Yeah. He's not going to get shot, right? So this is he's amazing but fallible, not superhuman, right?
Totally. I think that's kind of a stroke of genius from my opinion, because we do realize, of course, very quickly this is our hero, but he does have, as you said, Dave, those sort of vulnerabilities. But it's also something that pulls us into this world so much more than any other option. You're sitting there and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. First of all, this is the Old West. Shit was dire all around. And even if you were, even if you were a heroic sort of persona, the vulnerabilities were right there in your face 24 hours a day, and you were going to get hit by a bullet or die of dysentery or live your Oregon Trail, nightmare we used to on the computer. But, it is just, I think, a stroke of genius to have him hit so quickly and to showcase that vulnerability. Right. Yeah.
Well, even when we get to the Sweetwater place, with the well of water that the guy built in there, part of the point of that was that he had clean drinking water, which was a special thing. This is, like you said, dysentery. You drank liquor. You lived off of alcohol because the water was kind of dangerous and not necessarily clean. This was not a well-developed area. Progress, industrialization, it was coming, but it wasn't there yet.
Okay, one thing about that, Dave. One thing that we have, history has corrected us is often those places could access clean water, but they couldn't charge the same way they could for alcohol.
Okay.
I see.
Which is still the case.
Yeah, right.
You get some more fun out
Well,
of it.
well now
Like,
they're like, would you like the expensive sparkling or bottled, still water? And it's like, if you want water, you're still paying for it, buddy.
There you go.
Totally. But it's like, even at that point, like there's a part later where, Joe McBain stops off at sort of the stagecoach place and like she asks if she can take a bath. And it's like, the bath has been there. That water hasn't been changed.
Only three people have been in it today.
Been in this sucker. And you're like, it's actually pretty clean. It's actually not so bad.
Right.
And that's like luxury, man. That's like, that's how you're going to clean yourself in the luxurious establishment. This film does a great job of showing, because it's that moment right before civilization comes to the Wild West, and that's why the train is such a key component to this thing.
Right.
Because basically, once you actually laid the train tracks that got all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast, this, sort of myth of the American West, where there's poetic justice, where it's beyond the law, where it's, an eye for an eye, and all that fun stuff that, Westerns are based on, it all just goes out the window. So this is that moment where civilization is just about to arrive, and those old Western heroes like Harmonica, like Frank, that live and die by the gun, are done, and they know it. And that's a big part of what the story ends up being, is that it's the final days of that, and they both sort of acknowledge that, this is it, man. This is, kind of our way of life is dying out.
Right.
Absolutely.
And this is, as Chris already pointed out, that opening sequence, it sets up this movie. There is no dialogue in that opening sequence. Zero. Even when Harmonica arrives, they don't say buckus to each other. Then, there's
some great lines. They do say a couple of very small lines.
Oh, do they?
So we asked the three dudes.
Oh, that's true.
They're with the horses.
Right. Oh, great line. Yes, that line.
Frank, and they're like, he's like, would you bring a horse for me?
Would you bring a horse for me?
Two horses too many.
They look at each other like, looks like we're one shy.
Looks like you brought two too many.
Yeah. That's right. You brought too many.
Too many, and then it's boom.
Boom. That's right. That was really good. Okay.
You brought too many.
This is what I get watching it 2 weeks ago. Whoopsie. Okay. Yeah. But a fun fact about this movie that I also love is apparently if you take all the dialogue in the movie, it's only 15 pages worth of script if you put it all together. So it's
like
not
a silent film.
It's not dialogue heavy, and most of the dialogue is somewhat curt and opaque, and people sometimes speak very directly and sometimes are speaking around each other, but it's not that much dialogue in as a whole.
Chris, you just said that, and I've never thought about this, and I love this film, I've seen it numerous times, and with what you were saying, Dave, about subtracting the dialogue and it only being about 15 pages, it does sit someplace between a silent film and a contemporary film, actually.
Sure.
When you factor in how well it's foleyed, how well the sound design is, how narrative the sound design is, it does kind of sit someplace between those two.
When you get this fun thing where when the dialogue hits, none of it is plot oriented. They don't tell you anything that's about the plot.
Right.
It's always fun, like wordplay, like the thing we just broke down with the bringing too many horses and that kind of thing. You got the other one where Cheyenne and Harmonica meet each other, which they maybe act two. Spoiler alert. But they meet each other and they have this great interaction, between, do you actually play, or, can you shoot? And it's all of this like fun. It's almost like early hip hop because it's like rhymes. It's like, playing back and forth rhyme structure stuff. It's really fun.
I made a note in my notes, and specifically for the first scene, the first few sequences. This feels like a bunch of grown men fucking each other on camera without sex. That's what it's. To your point, Chris, it's the interplay. It's that like jab, that like pull back, that jab, that like pull back. I'm like,
Well,
Oh, these guys are just banging right now. All right, their
It's like
egos
an
are just
early
banging.
heated
Right.
rivalry.
Yeah,
It's like, this is where heated rivalry came from.
right.
well,
There
of
you go.
course, the gunfight. When the gunfight finally happens, that is the final.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
actual final sex,
Yeah,
the actual
pretty
final
much.
intercourse, and
That's
it's
the
all
final
foreplay up until
That's
then.
the
Yeah.
gasm.
Are we
That's
done?
the gasm moment. By the way,
Yes.
Smokey Robinson, our lovely Smokey Robinson, has an album he put out at 80 years old called Gasms. Just unrelated to anything else. But go on.
That's pretty fun. At 80 years old, dude, he still loves the gasm.
Gasms.
Well, let's keep going on the. What about wine thoughts, Dallas? Kick us off here. What were you thinking after roughly Act 1 of this movie?
You know what's overwhelming about this film, and we talked about it being so sensory, and I don't think I've ever done this before in terms of an approach to pairing. The color, this color scheme, the palette of this film is just so alluring. And if you have the chance to watch this in any sort of graduated kind of presentation level, like with, Technicolor or whatever it is stunning. It is just a stunning film. And everything is just so sort of orange and rusty, but also arid. And yeah, stop wiggling your eyebrows just because I said the word orange. I saw that. But it's like it lives someplace between an orange and like a pink kind of thing, a rosé. And so I couldn't get that out of my mind the whole time because it is kind of the backdrop for this entire world, So at this point, that is all I got. Truly.
Okay.
I'm like,
Okay.
like there's no notes, no sort of like no tannins, I'm just like, okay, this is just
Interesting.
orange and pink, and I'm connected to that sensory kind of thing for the first time. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, I will agree that Westerns it's a desaturated color palette, right?
Absolutely.
I think it was either the cinematographer or the gaffer on this film that is on record as saying something like with Westerns, he's like, you can't have too many colors in a Western. Like you have to, you got your browns, you got your oranges, you've got your steel grays, and but I mean, it's like a relatively, all very muted, all very tight. So, but on that note, there's always a particular kind of wine that I think of when it comes to a Western. And it definitely is, the textures of a Western, the color palette of a Western, that dirt and dust and grittiness. So unlike you, Dallas, like the tannins are always kind of important for me when I'm starting to watch a Western because it's always that kind of smoky, dusty, gritty. And I'm like, I want sand in my mouth, my friends. I think I need that. It's like, it's got to be something I'm like chewing on and is like, scratching up my tongue on the way down. And it's not going to feel right if that's not here. So this particular kind of wine that I always think of for a Western, I was pretty sure it was going to be that. And it's a type of wine that is, in fact, heavily associated with a specific part of Italy, which was perfect. And then even better, this is a type of wine that suffered a near extinction in the 50s and 60s when, quote unquote, progress took over and made it largely obsolete and made it disappear, or at least financially unsuitable compared to what progress and industrialization was suddenly allowing these parts of the world to do. And so all of that thematically was really falling into place for me, where I'm like, okay, this is 100% the style of wine I'm going to stick to. I'm probably going to find it from that region in Italy, which maybe if this holds true, I'll reveal maybe after Act 2 here. But those were my thoughts. And I was nothing in Act 1. I was like, it's still going to be perfect. It's slow, something you want to sip slowly, be brooding, have those textures, have that heaviness in the mouth, because this is not a like porch sipper wine kind of a movie. Like, don't go through something fast because you will be drunk by the end of Act 1. It's like you need to go
drinking game movie.
Go slow. So that was my thought. How about you, Chris? What are you thinking at this point in terms of the wine pairing?
I gotta admit, like when I was thinking about this, I probably came preloaded with a bunch of assumptions because I love Westerns so much.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that, if I'm trying to think about, having never watched this film, which is hard as I've seen so many times, what are the kind of things that I'd be thinking about? And so I'm like, I'm sort of in your world, Dave, where I wanted something like sort of bigger, a little bit bolder, darker fruit, that kind of thing, but very comforting, like a dude wine. I wanted like a guy's wine when I started this kind of thing, because that was my assumption, is that like, oh, I'm getting into the Western. I'm like, you know, having watched like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Some Mad Dog 2020 or some Thunderbird is what you're saying. Huh?
Totally some cherry wine. It's still going to be polished because I still like my stuff to have some acidity and some polish. I like some ageability, but it was going to be like more like a barbecue style wine, the kind of thing I would eat with ribs, that kind of thing. So that was probably like my first thinking point, and I like to think about it before we ever even actually watched the movie. And then, you know, it definitely evolved as I watched the movie and started thinking about it, because the movie is quite different than I initially thought it would be. When I think back to the first time I saw it, it does evolve and change. So
yes,
for sure.
100%. All right.
Yeah.
On that note, Chris, take us into Act 2.
All right, so here we go with Act 2. And so, like I said, trying to read a synopsis of a Leone film is always a challenge, so hang with me here. So, all right, in a private railroad car, Morton, played by Gabriele Ferretti, crippled and dying railroad tycoon, berates Frank for killing the McBains. He only wanted Frank to scare McBain, not kill him. And now a Mrs. McBain has shown up, making the killings pointless. Morton began building his railroad inside of the Atlantic Ocean, and then he means to build his way to the Pacific before he dies. Now, he hired Frank to remove small obstacles from the tracks, but Frank intends to be a wealthy businessman himself. Morton tells Frank he will never be like Morton, because Frank doesn't understand the money is more powerful than guns. After sharing a congenial interlude with Jill, Cheyenne finishes his coffee and rides away with his men. Jill takes her traveling bags out of the wagon, but Harmonica is there and demands that she stay. As he throws her down roughly, begins ripping at her clothes, Jill becomes alarmed. Instead of harming her, he simply removes the white trimmings from her black dress, leaving her in full mourning. They go to the well for a drink of water, only to be attacked by two more of Frank's men. Harmonica kills them. From a nearby vantage point, Cheyenne sees how handy Harmonica is with a gun. Well, clears that up. So Jill, right? The key, he could play. He could actually play now. All right. So now we got something. So Jill goes to the laundry and asks Wobbles to tell Frank she knows everything and wants to negotiate with Frank personally. Wobbles denies knowing anyone named Frank. Dude, get over it, Wobbles.
I know.
Right? I mean, that guy. He's so
You're the worst.
whiny.
You're the worst middleman, Wobbles. You are the worst middleman.
Dude, his death scene is so. We'll talk about that.
That's
I
good.
love it so much. That's one of the best lines. Anyway, but Jill repeats her demand and leaves. Wobbles heads out to Morton's private train, unaware that Harmonica is following him. Morton scolds him for coming there. Wobble says he wasn't followed, and he thought Morton and Frank would want to know about Mrs. McBain. When Frank sees Harmonica's shadow on the ground, he knows someone's on the roof, and he signals the train to start moving. Stopping in open country, Frank captures Harmonica. Harmonica lets Frank know that the two men he sent to kill Jill are themselves dead. So I just want to remind everybody, we as the audience still have no fucking clue what Harmonica's beef is. What is going on with this guy? We are like an hour and a half into this thing, and he's got one mission, and we have no idea what it is. That's just a little reminder. Realizing this is the man who wanted to meet with him, Frank asks Harmonica who he is. Harmonica answers with the names of two men Frank has killed. Morton interrupts the interrogation to remind Frank he has more urgent business, the woman. Taken to himself, he leaves the three men behind on the train to guard Harmonica and keep an eye on Morton, whom he doesn't trust. Over the next few minutes, Cheyenne craftily disposes of the three gunmen one by one, sets Harmonica free. They now have Morton in their power, but they will deal with him later, choosing to stop the train and ride to Jill's aid. Back at Sweetwater, Jill is puzzled by the arrival of a large amount of lumber and building supplies that McBain ordered. Since he paid cash, it all belongs to her. What the fuck is he building? So neither the lumberman nor Sam could say what it's for, but there are enough materials to build at least 8 buildings. When the lumberman shows her a blank sign and asks if she knows what should go on it, boom, she recognizes its outline from the miniature train station and tells him it should say station. Boom. Inside the house. She looks through the trunk again with model train station. Just then, Frank appears and captures her. Inside a ruin at the... How do we get to the Navajo Cliff ruin, by the way? That part is always so confusing. It's like, what happened there? Yeah. He loves to do weird things with time and space and never answers it. Anyway, we're apparently now inside a ruin of the Navajo Cliff, I guess. Frank enjoys an intimate interlude.
Morton's just hanging out, like waiting for him there. And I'm like, why is Morton there?
Although, to be fair, there's a whole lot to do in this town.
Right?
So
this is true.
Where is this place? We haven't seen this Navajo Cliff at all in this film, and it just pops up here. So anyway, he remarks that she'll do anything to stay alive, and that it seems she can't resist a man's touch, even the touch of a man who killed her husband. That didn't age well.
You think?
Frank knows from inquiries sent over the telegraph that Jill was one of the most popular prostitutes in New Orleans until she married McBain. As he undresses her, he thinks of marrying her himself to take over the land. Realizing he would make a bad husband, he comes up with a quicker, simpler solution. Here's our fun little fact. Claudia Cardinale's very first scene, in fact, the very first scene shot in the movie was this intimate scene with the one and only Henry Fonda. Paramount's publicist had hyped it as the first true love scene of Henry Fonda's entire career and called a press conference just before the cameras rolled. That takes us through.
Gotta love it.
Here we are.
That's right.
Yeah,
yeah, Act 2 is great.
Act 2's a lot. Act 2, so this was where, when Cheyenne shows up to Jill's place and the conversation, going back to how the dialogue can be very, there's a lot of wordplay and a lot of, it's very opaque. It kind of talks, it dances around things. I had to watch that scene twice to figure out what Cheyenne was trying, what did he just say? What just happened between these two characters? And the first time I watched it, the scene ended and I'm like, I literally was paying full attention to this scene and I do not know what just happened. He came and he left and I'm like, and she was kind of upset, but also kind of put up with him. And I replayed it and really paid attention to the dialogue a second time. And then it all clicked. And I was like, there is something about the way the dialogue works in this movie it's brilliant in its own way because it rarely comes out and just says what it's trying to say. Yeah. But it's all there and you can understand. And the plot is actually there are plot twists all throughout this story, but they're not revealed in any way. They're just sort of, you just got to follow what the characters are saying when they're talking about the machinations that are happening behind the scenes. But yeah, this act much more complex than Act 1. Sure. There's much more going on, far more characters, all layered on top of each other. You have Morton, who suddenly shows up as sort of the main villain that's funding and kind of financing everything. And it's really fascinating, though, that the gunslingers, they cannot quite accept that Morton's a threat. They just keep leaving him there, even though if he went away... It's weird because I'm like, if you would just shoot the motherfucker, this would kind of stop. But they're like, yeah, but you'll never shoot us, so we don't I don't understand. How are you a threat? There is that weird block.
Isn't that such a perfect comment on America?
I think that's the point.
I think that's the whole point.
He makes a reference. Go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
No, basically, that's the thing that I love so much about this film is that it is an outsider's perspective on American history and American culture, and they have a very keen understanding of it. These are, Italian guys that grew up watching, American films, and so they sort of have this really, really interesting insight into the American way that a lot of the time the people actually grow up and live in this country don't get. And I think that's why that like Morton Frank interaction is so fascinating, because, you know, so often, especially in Westerns, you assume that violence will always win and it will always trump any other form of power, when in reality, all they're fighting about this entire time is about land and money, which is essentially what ended up. That's where we are.
It's expansion. Yeah,
right. Expansion, and who's
it's a great commentary on capitalism. Yes, where the money is where all the threats actually lie, where everything that we complain about or need to fight back against, it's all coming from the people that have the power, the people who have the money, who actually have the power. But we mostly get distracted by like being tough on quote unquote crime. Never white collar crime. It's always the other kind of crime. And the man with the gun is the bigger threat forever and ever and ever than the people who are actually shaping everything around him.
Well, he has that line, and it may actually be in Act 3, but he says he has a stack of money. And he says, the only thing that beats what you have in your hand, it is in Act 3, I think, is what I have in mine. And
it's coming.
It's coming. So, spoiler alert, guys, if you haven't seen this 90-year-old film.
But they keep leaving Morton, because like Cheyenne and Harmonica and Frank, they all just keep leaving Morton alive. Because he's crippled, he's physically crippled, and can't wield a gun. And Morton keeps telling everybody who will listen to him that he's more powerful than them because of the money.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
And nobody can buy it.
Okay.
Especially not these gunslingers. Yeah.
I think that's the comedy of this film.
Yes.
I think that is the core comedy of this.
That's the irony. That's
every time I see that, I'm just like, guys, he's telling you. He's telling me, not only he's telling the cast, the characters, he's telling the audience. He's telling the audience, you guys aren't seeing this. It's hilarious that you aren't seeing that this is the thing that makes all these other people kill one another, makes all these other guns fire.
Right.
But the other thing that's so great and brilliant about the structure of this film is that there's one central story that everybody wants to know. And it's Harmonica, and why Harmonica is dead set on trying to kill Frank.
Yeah.
And it's like, because that's what Westerns are always about. And so you assume that that's the thing that actually matters.
Right.
And it is the least important part of the entire film. When that story actually gets revealed, which I won't reveal, so that is 100% an Act 3 thing. But that part, while it is super satisfying and wonderful, you realize that you're at the end of the movie by that point, and you've actually sort of subplotted all of the key stuff that actually mattered, which is the expansion of the West and the domination of land, and being able to, have the foresight to realize that water is here, and that's going to mean that this is going to be a town, so whoever owns that land is going to be the one that's going to be rich. That's what they're fighting over. But all the audience cares about is why the one dude wants to shoot the other dude.
Why the vigilante wants to kill the the
they're focused on this hero. They're focused on this hero who is completely irrelevant.
Completely
excited, and not even that interesting.
He's a protagonist, and he has nothing to do with anything. Yeah,
that's that core irony. The whole time I'm watching this film, I'm just laughing my ass off, because for me, it's like, okay, the writer director, this is a conversation between he and the audience. Really, truly, authentically, a conversation between he and the audience. And so I'm just like, oh, this is so fucking funny. This is great commentary, but also this is so ridiculously funny. Wow.
It is. The one other thing I got to say with Act 2 is it does have one of my favorite lines, which is when they kill Wobbles and Frank kills him.
Poor Wobbles.
And so Frank, he's wearing, a belt and suspenders.
Yes. You can't trust a man. Like, why are you wearing? You can't trust a man with
suspenders.
Yes.
Yeah, he shoots both the suspenders and the belt. So how the hell can he trust a man who can't even trust his own pants?
Yes.
You gotta love it.
Why are you wearing a belt and suspenders? Right. Because what's
the point? Either or, people. Totally. It's a great
That is brilliant. All right, wine thoughts. Dallas, kick us off one more time. Any evolution on your wine thoughts here?
Definitely some evolution. I will say, I wanted something chalkier, of course, because now, you get into it,
Good.
all the dust ups,
Good.
right? You get all the
I
dust
agree.
ups, right? You're getting all the dust ups. That's one thing about this film. You see the dust is so palpable. Like I'm out there and I'm just like, God, my mouth is dry. I'm just like
The textures.
okay.
There's so much texture.
There's so much texture
in this
every
movie.
concept of texture, every concept and version, iteration of texture is in this film. That's why you can only have 15 pages of dialogue and still feel like it is chock full of narrative. There you go. You're welcome.
Oh, that's good use.
So, I think, as we know, this film was primarily filmed in 3 places: Cinecittà Studios in Rome, Monument Valley in Arizona or Utah, I think Arizona, Utah, and Granada in Spain. And the winery I chose is technically 1 degree away from the line of latitude where this film was actually filmed. The vineyard is in the shadow of the Oberenes Mountains, and that is a very popular area for this style of wine. In fact, the traditional methods of this particular vintage were on the verge of extinction because of contemporary international winemaking for the previous 30 years by the time this vineyard actually came around. But the vintners at this winery worked very hard to keep their lots exclusive and tiny. We're talking tiny. It is a husband and wife team who, like the couple in Eden, in fact, had different roots into winemaking. She was a proper vintner winemaker, and he was purely in the import side when they took over this winery. Yeah, that's all I'll say for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, I think no real evolution. I knew what I wanted. I didn't know the exact wine quite yet, but I knew it was going to be an orange wine. As Dallas somewhat revealed, or as I somewhat gave away the game when he said the word orange earlier.
Every time he hears, he starts blinking and winking, and I'm like, all right, Dave.
I know.
You'd be
It's hard
shitting
to
on
like,
poker
not
so
tell
much.
people what you got. Yeah, man.
I know, but it's going to be an orange wine, which is. But I decided, the Italian region that really brought orange wine back, kicking and screaming in the 1990s into popularity was the Friuli Venezia-Giulia region in northern Italy, once part of what is now Slovenia, but after somewhere there was some war. I don't pretend to know the history of this, but after certain wars, it wound up becoming part of Italy instead, and getting absorbed into northern Italy. But it kept a lot of Slovenia's history in terms of, especially orange winemaking. And it wasn't until the 50s and 60s when progress of clean white wine and being able to mass produce and white wine. For those listeners who are unaware of what orange wine really is, it's just skin contact white wine. So you're soaking white wine on the white grape skins, just like a red wine, to give it all that texture, give it all that extra body. But it takes time, just like a red wine, to make. And white wine, clean white wine, where you just you crush the grapes, let the juice run off, and nothing with the skins, and it's ready to drink right away. That, when progress let wine become more industrialized, everyone was pressured to start making that. And orange wine almost disappeared even from Friuli Venezia-Giulia. And it wasn't until kind of the kids of the generations that had made orange wine last. Their grandparents were the last people to make orange wine. And in the 90s, the kids came of age, remembered. They still had they had tasted some when they were very young. And they were like, what happened to that? We want to remember this old way of winemaking, and brought it back, much to the shock of the world, who had all kind of moved on from orange wine because white wine was so much simpler, so much cheaper, so much faster, that within 50 years, we had basically collectively forgotten that this style of wine even existed. And the few places that were still making it were all like Georgia, Hungary. They were behind the Iron Curtain during those times. So they weren't going out to the rest of the world. So the rest of the world outside of the Soviet world had just collectively forgotten orange wine existed. They brought it back in the 90s, shocked us all. Everyone thought we were like, what is this? This isn't real. This can't, don't pretend you like this. This is disgusting. And they basically had to slowly reintroduce us to it. But fun fact about orange wine, or one of the fun facts I always love to give, it is technically the oldest form of wine known to man, because white wine grapes would have been the first we ever cultivated. And so that would have been the OG wine. So it's not a new thing. Wine. Yeah, but it did come back in the 90s thanks to that region. It's called Ramato, or copper wine, in the Friuli Venezia-Giulia region. And so it definitely was going to be a wine from that. One, that I needed the grit. I needed the dust. So none of this 1 to 2 week skin contact bullshit. This was going to be months on the skins. I needed to make sure it was going to be one of those. And I did find a winery that not only did that, but in honor of Chris and his Eden documentary, it was a winery that just had the young generation taking over from the parents, much like the story in the Eden documentary. So we'll get to that in Act 3 when I make the final reveal. But Chris, how about you? What were you thinking during Act 2 here?
Well, so I had a lot of changes during Act 2 because remember, I'm going under this assumption that I didn't know anything about this damn film going into it, so I'd made my decision, and then I watch Act 1. So now we're in Act 2, and I'm like, whoa, okay, I got to do something different. So I'm in it for the long haul, because this movie is definitely in it for the long haul. So I wanted something a little bit more complexity. Okay. I also, one of the things I started to get excited about and picking up on is sort of the cultural exchange side of this. So I love that this film is a group of Italian people making a film about American culture and iconic American culture, and doing some kind of an interesting interpretation of that. So that got really exciting for me. And so I decided to flip it and instead go with an American winery that is doing a interpretation of a traditional French grape, and in particular a French, region that is very, very well known. And so that started to get kind of exciting to think about it in those terms, because, you sort of have that reverse cultural exchange. It's very common, because we're talking the New World here, and this is a California winery, that a lot of the time we take our inspiration from the Old World. And so it's sort of the reverse of what actually happened with this particular film. And so I got really, really excited about that. And then the other thing that I really wanted that, I think Dallas keeps mentioning is like the smell. This like movie is like, it's got so much texture and scent to it. I wanted heavy aromatics. Nice. I really, really wanted it to be very aromatic, so that I'm when I think of this wine, I spend probably more time with my nose in there than I even do tasting it, because it's it just comes to life in the bouquet. So that's kind of where I'm at this point through Act 2.
All right. Woo, beautiful. Yeah. All right, guys, let's bring it on home with Act 3. After a threatening sexual encounter with Frank, Jill is forced to auction the land. However, Frank's henchmen intimidate bidders so Frank can buy it at a low price. Harmonica appears with Cheyenne in tow and bids $5,000, which is the bounty on Cheyenne, as a wanted fugitive. Don't forget, Frank made it look like Cheyenne is the one who killed the McVeigh. So that's why he's a wanted fugitive. Exactly. Frank is unsuccessful. Yep. Frank is unsuccessful in buying Harmonica out and wonders why Harmonica is pursuing him. Morton, the wonder through the whole movie. He wonders again why Harmonica is pursuing him. Morton bribes Frank's own men to kill him, but Harmonica intervenes, helping Frank take out the lot of them. When Jill asks why he saved Frank, Harmonica replies, "I didn't let them kill him, and that's not the same thing." Frank discovers the aftermath of a gun battle at Morton's train. Bodies of Frank's men and Cheyenne's men lie strewn along the tracks and in Morton's private car. He finds Morton crawling desperately to a nearby mud puddle. Frank draws and cocks his gun to finish him off, but then decides to let him suffer. Morton dies with the sound of the ocean waves crashing in his mind, but no one actually kills him once again. The track laying crew is reaching Sweetwater at last, and construction crews are busily turning the stacks of lumber into the beginnings of a town. Harmonica sits at the farmyard gate as Cheyenne comes riding awkwardly in and goes inside. Not quite his usual self, but again asks for coffee, which Jill has ready this time. They both sense that outside something important is about to happen with Harmonica. Cheyenne says he's whittling on a piece of wood. I got the feeling when he stops whittling, something's going to happen. Frank rides up to the gate and Harmonica stops whittling. They exchange a few words. Frank admits he'll never be a businessman, just a man. They acknowledge they're of an ancient race being killed off by the coming of the modern age, arriving right next to them as they speak. Then Frank gets to the business between them. The future don't matter to us. Nothing matters now. Not the land, not the money, not the woman. I came here to see you, because I know that now you'll tell me what you're after. Only at the point of dying, Harmonica tells him. Frank says, I know. And they stride out into the farmyard to face off for the final show. Inside, Cheyenne begins to clean up and shave while he watches the railroad move up. He tells Jill she should take water out to the workers at the tracks, letting them enjoy the sight of the beautiful woman. And if one of them should pat her back behind, she should just make believe it's nothing. They earned it.
God damn.
Didn't age well.
Jeez.
As Frank and Harmonica square up a few feet apart, preparing to duel, Harmonica remembers his history with Frank in a flashback. A young Frank strides out of the desert to the isolated ruin of a Spanish mission, a lone arch with a bell hanging at the top. He places a brand new harmonica into a young man's mouth, telling him to keep his loving brother happy. The youth's hands are bound behind him, and his older brother, also bound, is standing on his shoulders with a noose around his neck. Frank and his men wait for the inevitable moment when the boy's legs will give way and complete the hanging. The doomed man curses Frank and kicks his younger brother away. The harmonica drops out of the young man's mouth as he falls into the dust. Frank and Harmonica draw and shoot. It's Frank who turns around and staggers a few steps before he falls to his knees. He asks Harmonica again one last time, who are you? In answer, Harmonica places the old beaten-up harmonica into Frank's mouth. Frank remembers. He sees the image of the boy falling into the dust and the harmonica dropping out of his mouth. Frank falls lifelessly into the dust and the harmonica drops out of his mouth. Cheyenne tells Jill he's not the right man for her, but neither is Harmonica. There's something inside a man like that, he tells her, something to do with death. Once Harmonica has dealt with Frank, he will come inside, pick up his things, and move on. Harmonica comes in, true to Cheyenne's prediction, picks up his belongings, and tells Jill he has to go. Jill is wearing a dress whose top reveals her cleavage. They share a lingering look, and then he opens the front door and surveys the developing street scene outside. It's going to be a beautiful town, Sweetwater, he says. Jill hopes he will come back someday. With a doubtful someday, Harmonica leaves. Cheyenne, too, says goodbye and pats Jill on the behind, telling her to make believe it's nothing. As the two men ride away, Cheyenne pauses to get off his horse before dropping to the ground. Harmonica discovers that Cheyenne has been gut-shot, the work of Morton himself during the gun battle at the train. Must get knocked on him before.
There you go.
Cheyenne asks Harmonica to go away. He doesn't want the other man to see him die. Harmonica turns away and soon hears Cheyenne fall over dead. Just then, the work train rolls into Sweetwater and stops at the station, which has its station sign in place. Harmonica takes Cheyenne's body away as Jill carries water out. The newly arrived railroad workers. Roll credits.
Yeah, buddy.
Buddy, wait, I gotta say one thing that you cut out. So I got 15 minutes, just so you guys know. In terms,
Okay,
we can wrap that up and we can probably get you out of
Any
here.
new thoughts on the movie? I mean, it's a perfect ending. I mean, there's just everything comes together in all the ways. It's tragic, it's semi-heroic, and progress arrives, and the gunslingers ride away.
Yeah.
They get their showdown,
They
you know,
get their
and it's
showdown.
like, well, because like in a Sergio Leone film, ever since definitely for a few dollars more a second film, they always had the ending of the showdown. And that gets so hard as a filmmaker, really any artist, when you get known for one iconic thing. How do you find a way to one up it? And one of the things that's so cool about this movie is that there's no way he was going to be able to one up the epic showdown at the end of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is also like a, 5-minute sequence all built to music and all three of those characters doing their showdown. He wasn't going to do that. And so in the end, he gives you your showdown that you want and deserve and know, but it sort of reminds you that it's actually kind of the minor part of the film. The actual reveal of why harmonica wants to kill Frank is somewhat unsatisfying, because it's satisfying in the sense that you get it. He's scarred because he feels responsible for the death of his own brother. And, you tie the harmonica thing back in there, which is a great plot point, but it's like, that's it. And at the same time, it feels totally satisfying because it's what you should get out of it. And they solve it through the score, really, because the score is the thing that has been building to do all of that. I mean, we haven't talked about the score since the beginning. The score has 4 main themes, and every other piece of it is a different instrumentation of that same exact score. And the original score that you hear is the original harmonica piece, which is the same piece that comes back for the end, and it actually marries with Frank's theme, so that Frank's theme has harmonica in it. So they solve it all through the score and tie it all back together, even though, you don't necessarily need to. It's not like a complicated backstory as to why the hell harmonica wants to kill Frank.
I think the central, I don't know if thesis, but idea of this film is the micro versus the macro. Is like the filmmaker is essentially saying, look, you were focused on this individual grudge between two people. If you would just zoom out for one moment. He's saying that when it comes to the money and the gunslingers, that concept, that idea. But he's also saying that in terms of, the individual lives of these people. Really important to the people. Not important if you just zoomed out and realized that there's an entire wave happening in the background of civilization that is going to make all of that obsolete and unimportant.
And to Chris's point about this revelation of what harmonica was doing, it's such a personal, just between these two men, having nothing to do with absolutely anything. It's so small.
With anything else.
With anything else. Frank is a horrible person, but that's it. Yeah.
And they both place it as the greatest important. That's why that scene, and you read all of the dialogue that Frank says to harmonica when he shows up at the game, because harmonica's sitting there waiting for him. He knows that Frank can't not go on living, knowing that there's this guy who has beef with him. And
Frank throws away whatever evolution he was going to do with Morton. Like, I'm never going to be I'm never going to be a businessman. All I care about is this. All I care about is having this fucking showdown with you, and I'm throwing everything else away to have it.
And it's a great study of masculinity and obsession and all the things that you try and build your identity around that then make you blind to all the other stuff that actually matters.
And all that's left is the lone woman after all the men have left and died or left, and taking care of everything and ushering in the new wave of the future.
That's right. It's a great fucking movie. It's a great movie.
It is. All right. So let's wrap this up because Chris has limited left.
We got 6 minutes.
We just ramble. So I'll start with the wine reveal here because mine's going to be relatively simple, but it's orange wine. It's from the Friuli region, and it is a wine called Aransat, which is Friulian slang for orange. Aransat. And it's a family-run organization, 18 hectares of organically farmed vines, 12 kilometers from the Slovenian border. This is a family affair with the younger generation inspired to take over for their parents after enjoying a bottle of Friuliano in the family vineyard as a teen. This is Italy, after all. So this is a blend of Pinot Grigio and Savaian Blanc. Natural fermentation on the skins occurring in stainless steel tanks at warmer temperatures, around 24 degrees Celsius. pretty warm.
Gotcha.
That's pretty up there. Post-fermentation maceration on skins lasting 90 days, so 3 months on the skins. The wine is unfiltered and racked twice prior to bottling. So this is dust in the glass.
90
This
days
is
on the
90
skins?
days. Oh, buddy,
Jesus.
I had a Mexican
Jesus
orange
Christ,
wine
though.
that was 180 days on the skin.
Wow, bud.
Which was
oh my goodness.
when I drained the bottle had like stains like a red wine bottle has often,
Yeah, I
like
bet.
when it's a really dark one. Like it was stained orange all up and down. I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. This one's not quite that bad, but this was this still is dusty. It's got the grit, it's got the tannins. You are chewing on it. It's got the textures. And the orange, you've got the honey, you've got the apricot, you've got the minerality, you've got that bite and bitterness of the tannins. You need some bitterness to go with this movie too. Like, don't do easy drinking, guys. You need something that's gonna, this is a movie that has hope for the future, but it's about the bitterness of endings, and the grudges you hold from the past.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, this is not. We are kicking and screaming into the new era in this movie. It's not happening naturally. Everyone's trying to, steal, rob, kill from everyone else in order to stake their claim and stake out their place in the new coming order. So you need a wine that matches all of those things, the textures of this film, and also being a Western. Orange wine, if you ever do a Western or a post-apocalyptic movie, which are the two things, Western progress hasn't arrived or is about to arrive, and post-apocalyptic, it's gone away. And either way, that's where I think orange wine often comes into play, this very ancient type of wine that progress does tend to obliterate, and we have to very consciously choose to bring back and to keep making. So that's my wine, Aransat. That's its full name. You can find this generally $20-$30 a bottle. It's relatively affordable and has everything I wanted in this bad boy. So, all right, Dallas, kick us. Take it over. What's next?
Yeah, let's run through this real quick because you've got 3 minutes left. All right, so
let's do the Chris.
Six.
Six.
Chris, you go first. So if you have to bail while Dallas is doing his, let's go with that.
Exactly.
So go ahead, Chris. You go next.
I'll try and keep it kind of quick. So in the end, I ended up with a Syrah because I absolutely love that smoky nature, right? And I like the acidity. It's definitely a New World Syrah. It's got all that like texture, but it's got that, fresh acidity. And so like this to me is the blending of the new and the old all coming back around together. So I went with a 2023 PAX Sonoma Hillside Syrah. I absolutely love PAX. If anybody has ever heard of them, PAX. You guys ever heard of PAX Mall? Yeah, so they're up in Sebastopol. Oh my goodness. So PAX loves the Northern Rhone. And so it's this family-owned winery. And, they've been around since 2000. And, PAX is like an aromatic master. He's, big into whole cluster, carbonic maceration. It doesn't see new oak. It's all in concrete. So what you get is a very fresh expression, but he purposefully chooses all of these very cool climate, Sonoma coast, California, Syrah vineyards that get those epic aromatics, man. It's like you get all that meatiness, you get all the smoke, you get like that wild feral nature that you get from like a Côte Rôtie or an Hermitage or that kind of thing. Nice. But it's also mixed with the very high acidity that you get from sort of that new California wine style, right? Because it's like his stuff comes in at like, I think this wine's like 12.8. So it comes in very low ABV and high acidity. It's super ageable too. Like it's, the tannins really start to calm down. It gives you a nice, good mouthfeel, but it's like every time you go back to that nose, it's evolving and changing on you. And so it's like, it's a super fun wine to have with this kind of a movie, because if you allow yourself to take a break and like focus on the film, the thing is evolving the entire time. Absolutely. And so are all your assumptions about what you cared about. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about this whole way through, right? so much of what they do with this film is mess with your own assumptions, because they, sort of hold back the things that you hold dear and think that you care about in the Western, and then embed all of those subplots, which are actually the most important pieces to be able to make a really interesting cultural commentary on an Italian perspective of American culture. And it's all in there. And I think this wine very much has a lot of that in there. It's pretty relatively small production, but you can get it online. You can obviously get it from them. 2023 is a dynamite vintage because it's a super cool vintage. It always does better in a cool vintage because it doesn't get too alcoholic, too fruity, anything like that. So PAX, P-A-X.
Yeah.
Sonoma Hillside Syrah. Yeah,
all right.
Nice.
Love it.
All right, Dallas, take us home.
All right. Real quick. All right. So, as I said, the Vintners are husband and wife team, harken back to your Eden central characters. I wanted something, of course, that was dry, but also very sleek. This film is very sleek. The whole world is sleek. It is alluring. Like we said, every moment of this film just fucking pulls you in, draws you in. We talked about the smell, the sensory thing, right? There's all this sort of floral in this wine. There's the herbal thing, a really acute herbal. It is. The region is, as I said, is on the same lines of latitude as the filming location. The region is the Auvergne Mountains in Spain, of course. And if you know anything about Spanish wine, of course, it is one of the regions of Rioja. So I went with, and this, of course, is a blend. It is 85% Viura grape, 10% Grenache, and Grenache Blanca, and then 5% Tempranillo Blanco. And I went with, of course, here is the bottle, one of the new bottles. If you can see, it is the Valganon, the Alegre Valganon.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. It's really, it blows up. Yeah.
It is. It is lovely. As I said, the vintners keep their lots very small. They source from.
Say the full name of the wine.
It is the Alegre Valganon. I'm butchering that. It's Spanish, of course.
Got it.
Yeah. But
we'll have it down below in the show notes description of this episode. You'll have a link.
Absolutely will. On the nose, you get some of that limestone. You get all that sort of mineral thing. You get the herbal thing. It's dry. You get great texture. It is very fruity, but at the end, it leaves you very chalky and with that dry sensation, which is exactly what this film is. We talked about the micro and the macro and pulling out. And that's what I got. It's fantastic, and you should try it.
Woo! All right, everybody. All right. That wraps us up today with our epic discussion of Once Upon a Time in the West with Chris McGilvray. Go watch his Eden 2024 documentary, now streaming for free on Plex, or you can rent it on Apple TV or YouTube and elsewhere. Yeah. Chris, thank you so much. This has been a blast.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's one of my favorite movies, and it was so fun to get to think about it through the lens of pairing it with a wine, man. What a cool deal.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming, man.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this epic chat about Once Upon a Time in the West with director Chris McGilvray. Once again, make sure to check out his feature-length wine documentary, Eden, from 2024, about the Mount Eden Vineyard and Winery in the Santa Cruz Mountains, considered to have the longest lineage of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in all of North America. Currently streaming on Plex, at least here in the States, and also available to rent or buy on Apple, YouTube, and Fandango. Now, before you go, if you love what we do here, we ask only one thing broken down into about 12 sub things. Follow and subscribe to us. This does help us grow. Gets us in tight with all the algorithms. Also, tell a friend or fellow cinephile or oenophile about us, especially if they're both. If they're a cinephile and an oenophile, they have got to be listening to us. There's got to be a few dozen of us crazy bastards in the world. So for fuck's sake, they should all be listening to the only wine and movie pairing podcast in existence. Even better. And to endear yourself even more to our completely self-obsessed hearts, go follow us on Substack. Just go to vintertainmentstudios.com, where we'll keep you all up to date on all our upcoming live in-person wine and movie events. The first one scheduled for June 19th. Yes, Juneteenth. We have a series of 4 short films, each paired with a wine. We will tell you where in just a moment. Those tickets are going to go on sale the first week of June, so next week. We will give you more information on that in next week's episode, but we have limited space, so if you're in the LA area, you will definitely want to check this out. Go follow us on Substack, vintertainmentstudios.com. Where you will also find collabs with other writers, filmmakers, wine peeps. If you ask us nicely, even on Substack, DM us, slip into our DMs, and we will help you with your own personal wine and movie pairing at home. Tell us what you're watching. Tell us what kind of wine you got. We will help you find the right thing to pair it with. We love doing this. We are okay with doing it more. And many thanks to our sponsor, Curated Wine Shop. No idea where to begin finding a wine that pairs with your movie? That's okay. Almost literally nobody does. But Curated is here to help. They accept every Vintertainment-inspired challenge and will curate the selection to match your palate. Just tell them what you're trying to pair with, your budget, your preferences, and they will show you the way. Curated is a boutique wine shop on La Brea Avenue, Mid-City, Los Angeles, founded and operated by peeps currently and previously part of the entertainment ecosystem. Johnny, Kelly, Allison, and Mia, they are all fantastic. Go meet them. They carry an ever-changing, wide-ranging selection of small lot artisanal wines, from the known and comforting to the completely unique reds, whites, rosés, oranges, sparklings, dry wines, sweet wines, everything in between. Go check them out if you're in the LA area. And that is where our Juneteenth event of 4 short films paired with wines will be. So definitely check them out and be ready to snag your ticket. We have about 30 spaces for this event, so they're gonna go bloody fast. Find them online at curated-wines.com. They do ship, so if you want to talk to them online, send them an email. They'll help you with your wine and movie pairing, and they can ship it to you if you're not going to come into the store, if you're too far away to come into the storefront proper. That is curated-wines.com for them and vintertainmentstudios.com for us Vintertainment bros. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back in 1 week with another wine and entertainment pairing for Yo Vintertainment. It will be, in fact, 2008's Bottle Shock, starring Alan Rickman, Bill Pullman, Chris Pine, Chris Pine's wig, and Rachel Taylor. Next week is the 50th anniversary of the real-life event that movie chronicles, The Judgment of Paris. So if you have not seen this movie yet, you've got until next week to do it, and then come join us as we talk all about what The Judgment of Paris was, how it changed the wine world forever, especially the world of California wine, why it was so important, why it was not so important, and talk everything about this movie, Bottle Shock, which I've loved for a long, long time. It's very cheesy. It is not accurate to real life, but it's a lot of fun, and we are going to talk all about it and The Judgment of Paris. So join us next week for that, and we will see you then. Ciao.